Hey, welcome everybody to the Nutmeg Tavern. It's been another one of those days. I always feel out of breath when I show up for the live stream because we're always running right up to the last second. And in fact, we were less than an hour ago. We were shooting a cooking episode. So we're just now catching our breath. So I'm John Townsends, your host for the live Nutmeg Tavern, and we talk about history and what's happening with the channel, and we do lots of Q&A, and sometimes we have a topic. Today, we're going to talk maybe a little bit about beer soup and your questions and answers the best I can do. It's like a contest, and you guys beat me all the time about things I can't answer. Behind the scenes here, behind the camera, Aaron is on the console. He's making the live stream happen. He's trying out some new things with this live stream, so if it's a little bit different, bear with us. And not Kyle. That's not Kyle back there. Yeah. Ryan, who's usually over in behind the bar. He's on the question seat. He's digging right now, trying to find great questions to ask me to try to stump me. No, Ryan, pick out the ones I can answer, okay?
I'll try my
Good.
best.
He's going to do a great job of that. Let's see. What's up next? Do we have any other particular time? Well,
almost like we don't have any idea what we're going to do today.
Yeah, it's like we don't have anything. No. Usually I've got a drink. I've got a drink here, but I wasn't mixing my nutmeg, putting it into my drink because I didn't think that would go well with the small beer I've got here. Actually, I've got this really, really interesting soup. Bet you can't bet. Guess what kind of?
It's fine.
What kind of soup that I've got here? And there's even a bowl back there for Ryan to try out. He's a little bit more of a super taster than I am.
Super taster.
He's a super taster. This soup is from the recipe book that the folks down at Old Salem, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, they have a site down there, a wonderful site that has to do with the Moravian community. They got these beautiful buildings and a great museum. And one of the things they've got a great foodways program. And part of their program is working on translating a couple of German cookbooks from the 18th century. One of them is from 1787, very interesting cookbook, and one of the recipes in it is for beer soup. Yeah, right? Sounds perfect, doesn't it? Beer soup.
So, Little Boy in Sunshine just asked if you have any updates on that cookbook and the one that they're translating.
I have not been, the last time I checked, I did not see it on the website, so I don't know how they're progressing with making a version of that available. And it's tricky work translating those works. Number one, the words are a little weird. They're not exactly the same as sort of modern High German, and translating both the strange terminology, and then we have the 18th century terminology in cooking and the way there's a lot of interpretation to do there. So it's not really, really easy work to get it understood each time. Hopefully I got beer soup right though, because let me tell you, it's really good.
We've done a couple recipes.
Have you already tried it?
Right?
Have I already tried it?
The beer soup?
Yeah, I had to do the cooking episode.
Yeah, we just got done.
We just got done shooting it, and so
I haven't tried it.
But he hasn't tried it yet.
No. Yeah.
But we've done recipes from that.
Right, we have done recipes
before.
from that cookbook before. So here it is. It's sort of like cream of beer soup.
Cream of beer soup.
Cream of beer soup.
Cream of beer soup.
It is amazing.
Use some of that
It's
cream
amazing.
beer.
So I don't know how to describe it because there's some of these strange flavors that I don't know kind of what pocket to put them in. It just blows me away when I try it. So I want to have Ryan try it.
Oh gosh.
Here we go.
Somebody says they want the job of interpreting how much beer is in the soup.
Now, this soup is made with a small beer. You probably want something that isn't overwhelming in its flavor, or else
Made with a small beer and eaten with a small spoon.
I was going to give you a bigger spoon. I had a spoon like this big. He was complaining, how big his spoon was. And it's like,
woo-hoo-hoo! That is not what I expected.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. That's really sweet. Lots of onions?
no, didn't have any onions.
No
in it.
onions?
No onions.
Where's all that sweetness coming from? Is that sugar?
Sugar.
Jeez Louise. Have some sugar soup.
Yeah.
But you can taste the beer though, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can taste it.
Well, and it goes along. It needs toast with it too. You didn't have a
I don't have
toasted
any
piece
toast,
of bread.
John. Where's the toast?
It's in mine. No, it's really.
And you'll have to tune in Monday to see how it's made.
So Monday.
No onions in this. This is nuts.
So yeah, Aaron's like behind the 8 ball. We had a late shooting session this time, and so he's got to get it all. He's got to make it happen for Monday.
Monday's video will be cut on Monday.
Yes, so that we don't usually try to do that, but that's the way it is sometimes. So it'll be a fun one. It's not a difficult episode, so he'll get it done. He's good at that.
Yeah, yeah.
I like putting him under pressure.
This is just a little too much, though. But I'll get it done for our YouTube community.
You'll be all right.
What a complainer!
You'll be all right.
What a
I
complainer!
know.
So,
So-
Battle Bear wants to know the same thing that I want to know. Are you going to grow your beard back out?
The facial hair thing, that comes and goes with how I feel and whether or not I have a particular picture or episode or video, whatever, that really calls for having the proper facial hair. Because, English folks or, connected English, heritage folks in the 18th century, whether they're in England or North America, you're generally expected to be shaven, and beards are just not looked upon as normal. Only kind of specialized, different sort of people groups or cultures would have facial hair, and so when I'm trying to be a gentleman in the 18th century, I shave off all that stuff. And so Wednesday's video was specifically about this gentleman in Boston, and so I thought, hey, let's make it right? Okay, so
I always look like a gentleman even when I don't want to because I can't grow facial hair.
that's you, Ryan.
That's a really sad thing.
So Ryan, give me another guess. What is the description I'm missing here?
The description you're missing?
Right. What do you think that? Okay, you feel like there's onions in there, but there's not.
Yeah.
There's some other flavor, chocolatey. What do you
But
think?
I think that it's like, so there's the sugar on the top end, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the beer that gives you just a little bit of bitter, and I think that's what I'm thinking. It's onion. Those two
because
things
onions
together.
do that same thing. Yeah.
Right.
He can't even get
It's
it.
so good.
Yeah.
I did not expect
It's
it to
really
be that
good, but the cheese doesn't come through a whole lot.
The cheese.
I don't think
There's no cheese.
there is
in
no
it.
cheese.
Did you? I thought you said beer cheese. I was like, where the heck's the cheese?
There's no cheese in there.
Okay.
I think he just randomly said that.
I do that. Sometimes words just boop, cheese or
I was like,
nutmeg.
I didn't believe you that there was cheese.
It is nutmeg. It does need a little nutmeg.
But okay, so how much cream's in this?
Some.
I mean, there's a lot. There's definitely some fat in here.
Oh well, there's butter in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So cream,
it's gotta be good,
cream
right?
and butter.
Right.
You got beer, cream, butter, and sugar. What sort of dessert is this again that we're describing?
Well,
That's that food pyramid.
it's got all of the 4 groups right there.
Great. Somebody says Ryan has no idea what's in that soup. That is true. I don't.
I think it's tremendous.
I think it's good. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
surprised. It's not like any beer soup I've ever had.
Yeah, because
Oh, same.
you're
Yeah.
always making beer soup.
No,
right?
I've had different soups. I know that were beer based, but nothing like this. This is great. This is
Fantastic.
really cool.
So make
What's-
sure to check out Monday's episode.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is in there. There's fat, there's beer, and there's sugar. That's all I know.
It's got to be good.
Well, is that it for today?
Yeah, that's it.
See you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
So this is a great opportunity. I'll pop in while he's working on questions. And if you got some fun questions, send them Ryan's way.
Yeah, give me some questions, guys, because I've got a few, but you guys are having conversations which is awesome. But I need some questions
Right.
too.
And if you wanted to touch base on maybe Wednesday's video or Monday's video, what did we do in cooking episode on
Monday's
Monday?
was the mint sandwich.
Yeah,
the
the
open
mint
face
sandwich.
which was really good too.
That was weird.
No, it was
So,
delicious.
No, now let's talk about Patreon. So Patreon, we've got it's a way people like to support the channel. We have super chat like on YouTube right now, and we also have a way that people kind of support us each month with a little bit of money, and so we get Patreon people that support us in that way. We got a couple of new Patreon supporters, Matthew Winninger. Thank you, Matthew, and Pickman's Model. There's so two new Patreon folks, and it's such a great way to help us because actually we kind of set those monies aside to help us know how much we can spend on equipment and other like travel plans. So that's a real helpful way for us to kind of budget in the future because we know that those funds are coming in. That helps us make those kind of videos. So when we go and do a log barn video, that helps. We can set some of those monies aside for that, or other videos when we go out on the road or we need strange pieces of equipment as we continue to do videos. So thank you guys, all you folks out there in Patreon land that support us in that way.
Let me do it. Speaking of super chat, somebody threw a donation in.
Oh, great.
This is $5 from Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love your channel. Do you know why pewter was used so much in the 17th and 18th century?
Pewter is an easy metal to work. And so you can get that up to its molten state at, say, 500, 550 degrees, depending on the alloy that you're using for your pewter. It's easy to pour into molds, either sand molds or molds that are made out of metal. It's very easy to work and easy to rework. So, my pewter bowl is nice, but it's out of date. It's not the newest. It's sort of like saying, hey, my car is 10 years old. Can you melt it down and make a new car? One that's sort of, more in fashion. You can do that with your pewter. And they did that. They would take their old pewter to the pewterer. He'd melt it down and make them new vessels. So it does things that other things don't. It's a very versatile in that way. And you can shine it up and make it look pretty. And one of the most expensive sort of wares for cooking or for serving would be silver. In the time period, it's as close as you can get to that kind of look. And it's very inexpensive in comparison. So that's one of the reasons why pewter was very popular in that time period. And also because it's fairly soft, you can drop it on the floor, and while you may dent it, you're not going to break it like you would ceramic things or dent your really expensive silver mug or something. So it's got a lot of advantages. It also has disadvantages like everything else.
So Cat Rose is asking what metals are in pewter or were in pewter.
So you can make pewter out of several different metals. Lead is one of the possibles. So the inexpensive pewter would have lead in it. You also have other metals. Tin is the other major component. And then you have sort of little sub-metals that show up in small quantities to change the characteristics in certain ways, but you generally don't need a lot of them. Antimony, copper, silver, possibly in small quantities, are added to either stiffen it up or make it brighter or make it oxidize less. But the major components are lead and tin, and you can make like Britannia metal, which is a pewter that doesn't have any lead in it at all, which is, say, 96 or 95% tin, and then a little bit of say, antimony or something to make it a little harder, because tin all by itself is very soft. So there you go.
All right, I've got some questions here.
Sure.
Will we be doing more drinks in the Nutmeg Tavern?
I think the guy that answered that question would be back there.
Yeah. I promise you that what I want to do in the Nutmeg Tavern is get a little bit rude and clamorous.
Whoa.
So, we will be having more drinks in the Nutmeg Tavern, for sure.
Yeah, we'll be working on drinks. Again, we're a person short this week. Better than last week when we were 2 people short. But, I mean, normally he would be back here making a drink. He actually even had a drink planned for this week. But we were unable to do that because we're short. So, there you go.
So a few people are asking about Swedish recipes. I don't think that we made it clear that it wasn't last week's Swedish. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you have plans to do any more?
Remo, who sent us those translations, he was only able to do about a half a dozen. There's probably at least one more in the batch that looked interesting enough that I'll probably try to do it.
I thought that one was from Switzerland.
Switzerland. Not Swedish. Boy.
Oh,
Sorry,
Swiss,
my
excuse me.
brain went right out the side of my head
So
there.
how about Swedish recipe?
Swedish, I don't have any resources for that, and I'm not sure about any actual Swedish cookbooks from the time period. That's something I'll have to do some searching for.
Folks are also talking about Latin American cooking. What have we done, and what are we planning to do more?
Well, we've done a couple of the Spanish ones from Spain. Altamirez in the 1740s, 1749, I think he does that one particular cookbook, and I do plan on going back into that particular cookbook. I don't think there's anything that actually is written, just like there's no North American cookery cookbook that's actually published in North America until 1796 when Amelia Simmons does her cookbook. I don't think same thing in North America or in Central America, whatever. You don't find any of those things popping up as being printed that I know of until much later on, probably 19th century. So the Spanish cookery from Spain is as close as we're going to get. And again, I've got at least one more recipe targeted out of that cookbook to do. Those Spanish recipes are very, very interesting, and they give us a real glimpse on how even some of the North American cookery was being influenced by the Spanish cookery in that time period, because there's a lot of Spanish influence that's happening, even in the North America at that time. So,
All right. How about the hat that you're wearing? What's the? They want to know about the hat and where it is developed, or where it was developed.
So they're talking specifically about tricorns, and tricorns pop up in the early 18th century, late 17th century, and a lot of people want to ask about the why of tricorns, and I haven't dug into it a whole bunch because the development of that is actually pre what we generally do. So they're already fully formed and there by the time that we're doing our research. So I haven't really looked at the heart of that too much, but I believe the whole concept here is that in the time period, wigs were very, very popular, especially going back into the 17th century, early 18th century. They start to fall out of favor in the late 18th century, especially in North America, a little bit earlier than they might in England. But you've got this super fancy wig and you want to show it off. Those great big cavalier hats from the 17th century, so hat with a huge brim, it hides all your hair and you can't see it. And so they would, put the sides up to show off their fancy hair. That's my thought. I'd have to do a lot more research about exactly why on that. It's probably, again, one of those fashion things that's led by one particular person and everybody follows.
So this is an interesting question. Why are you eating all my soup?
That's good.
This person is asking, what areas during the Revolution conducted considerable amount for manufacturing during the war effort? So they're asking geographically where. I'm wondering how much of that was actually happening, because in more modern warfare, that's like complete factories would be changing what they're fabricating to support the war effort.
Well, just recently, as I've been reading about, I've been spending a little time reading about the Boston area in that time period, the Tea Party. And as I've been reading about that, it sort of has, there were pointers in the different kinds of books talking about how much industry there was actually happening in the colonies at the time. And I think that a lot of industry there was a lot more industry than we might think of going on. Again, the 18th century in North America is hard to pin down because we very quickly sort of stereotype and build some model in our mind that makes us think it's one way or the other. And it's a very complex place. In fact, if you think about it, that whole idea of the 13 colonies, they are all like little separate countries. And they almost act like that as people move from one colony to the other. Somebody, when Dr. Alexander Hamilton goes from Maryland up into the Northeast and into New England, they look at him he's from Mars, and and he feels like that in some ways. He's gone into another country. So it's very hard for us to generalize about what's happening with the colonies and what they were like. Some of the colonies were very agricultural, and some of them had a lot of industry and manufacturing going on in them. And you know that part of like any war is driven by some of the industry saying, we want to make war things. So we need a war so that more of our things get used. So there's a little bit of that going on. There's a whole bunch of driving forces behind the revolution that we could get into. Little factors that, and maybe bigger factors. So I think there's a lot of industry going on, and a lot of it is, they're getting turned into war effort things. Because a lot of things are needed.
I'm going to do some donations real quick.
Sure.
$10 from Max are Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Max.
Thank you.
Always the best way to start my weekend. Townsends team awesomeness.
Nice.
Thanks. This is Joe again. Joe Pergolesi the third. I don't really know how to. Same guy as before. $20. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love your Switchel video.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find a video on apple cider. Was apple cider popular in the 18th century?
Oh, yeah.
Was it made differently? Would love to see how it was made. And then $10 from the Atomic Gent. I just had 2 crowns applied today, and man, did they hurt. This makes me curious. What was dentistry like back in the 18th century?
Man.
So apple cider.
You were in heaven compared to dentistry in the 18th century, I bet.
Yep.
I don't know. You just pull that out of there. You don't need a crown. That just jerk it out of there. That was dentistry in the 18th century. If it's causing you trouble, just take it out. Let's see. What was the earlier question? I had something.
There's cider.
Yeah, cider's a massively important, and there are a couple of episodes that I just talked about cider. We haven't actually made cider in an episode. It's about that time of year, though.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my wife about making cider last night.
Yeah. So when we think of cider today, or at least in Indiana, I don't know about where you're at, but they changed the laws here in the last, decade. And we can't buy unpasteurized apple cider anymore. That's a sad thing. But apple cider to us is just the apple squeezings before, filtered, but before they've done anything. And in fact, we pasteurize it to make sure that our apple cider doesn't go anywhere after we put it in the jug. If it goes bad, it goes bad. In the 18th century, apple cider was, let's take these apple squeezings and let's put them in that barrel that we always make our apple cider in, and it makes apple cider. They really mean a beer type thing that's going on, an apple beer. It's fermenting, it's doing something, and it's changing into a different kind of product. And so when we talk about cider in the 18th century, we're talking about hard ciders, alcoholic ciders. We talk about ciders in, today, those are non-alcoholic. They're like grape juices to wine. Same kind of thing going on in the 18th century with cider, except theirs was all wine.
Folks in the chat are very excited about cider.
Yeah.
They like the sounds of cider.
And it was that basically, before you had the version of pasteurized cider, all you really needed to do was take your unpasteurized cider and kind of like, I'll set it there in a corner and, wait 4 days, wait 5 days, and ta-da, it was apple cider. It was a new beer, a green beer. It was ready. It was a fast, naturally fermenting from the yeasts that were there right in the squeezings. Of course, when you pasteurize it, you kill all that stuff, and then your apple cider is dead, and it's not going to do anything except sour in a bad way if it does ferments in a bad way. So yeah, apple cider, really important. They also had pear cider, which was called Perry. Excellent stuff. Very important. Very, very important for North America compared to, say, something like beer. It was more popular probably than beer in the 18th century in North America.
Yep. Did we cover all those donation questions here?
Yep.
All right.
Well, let me triple check.
In the meantime, I'm going to ask
we're
this.
good. We're good.
So a condiment called lemon pickle appears in 18th century cookbooks a fair amount. There are recipes for this. Have you considered doing a video on it? Do you know lemon pickle? Have you been stumped?
I don't recall doing any digging on that one, but I will. I'll take a look.
Okay. I'll write it down so he remembers.
Like not pickled lemons, but lemon pickle.
It was written like lemon pickle. If you guys want to get in the chat and make sure that we understand that correctly, we'll look into it.
In fact, if it could even point to a particular cookbook where it pops up, that'll help even more.
Yeah, there's a big now people are wondering pickled lemons or lemon pickles.
Yes.
This is an interesting question. You might not have an answer, I don't know, but how did pioneers deal with mildew? This person lives off the grid and has some trouble with that. He's thinking, man, they must have had a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's an issue. It really has a problem where you get a lot of just in housing situations where there are a lot of trees that overhang your house, and that sunlight doesn't get to your house. It doesn't drive off that moisture, and you end up with it being damp all the time, and a sort of a humidity problem that leads to mildew and molds, those sorts of things. And I think that's actually why they were we would probably call it overzealous about clearing the trees around their houses. And probably for that very reason. Now we think of, I want my cozy house kind of hidden in the trees. But of course we have air conditioners and dehumidifiers and all that kind of stuff to keep our houses dry, even though they're in a fairly sort of damp environment. But they worked pretty hard at making sure their houses weren't sort of overhung with lots and lots of trees, so you would have that sort of problem. Now that's pioneers in a house. I don't know what you're going to do if you're in a traveling situation, except that people generally didn't stay in a traveling situation for a long period of time.
So Paul Eckert seems to be excited about two questions.
Yes.
And I'm going to let you decide which one you answer.
Which one? Okay.
So, number one, he's trying to get some answers on who would play George Washington in a big-budget Hollywood movie. And then there's another question that he wants to know about, can we do a question on worst jobs of the 18th century? Which one you want?
Worst jobs.
Okay.
I'm not good at figuring it. I'm not a casting person. I don't keep track of actors. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know who I would pick to be a George
Danny
Washington.
DeVito.
There you go.
That's great.
Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah, Arnold or Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, man.
They're all too old.
If
though.
Sly was doing it, I'd watch it.
I like that they're too old.
Yeah.
That's why they can't.
Yeah, they're too old.
Not that they. I mean,
think
they look just like
Leo can do anything, right? Maybe
Neeson?
Leo.
Oh, Leo?
Leo.
Yeah.
I think I still consider him too young.
So the other question is, what was the
Yeah,
other
anyway.
question? He's driven
Worst
from my
jobs.
mind.
Worst jobs of the 18th century. Everyone.
Do you remember Timothy the Weaver at Mississinawa 2 years ago? Or last year?
Oh, yeah.
He was. So imagine somebody going around town right at dawn, and he's got these two buckets and a yoke, and he's running through town, and he's saying, night soil, man," collecting night soil. Do we know what night soil is? So night soil is. What's the best way of explaining night soil?
Well, there's night soil and there's chamber lye.
Right. There's chamber lye.
There you go.
Which is
We'll just say that there's a number one and a number two.
right, a number one and number two. So chamber lye would be number one, and night soil would be number two. You go around and collect that at dawn from all the different houses in a village or in a town, and you would say, now, why would you do that? Well, you'd use that in chamber lye, especially. You'd let chamber lye percolate for a while, and it turns into ammonia, and you would use that as a bleach in your laundry. I'm not sure exactly what you use chamber lye for, or night soil for, but fertilizer or something, I guess. But that's probably one of those jobs you don't want to have in the 18th century.
Dog 75 is for Gilbert Gottfried on George Washington. I think that's pretty funny.
I can't picture him, so.
He does the voice of the parrot in Aladdin. Unfortunately, I think that's probably what he's best known for. He's a comedian. All right. I'm going to try to right this ship here. Do you know of any books on colonial drink mixology?
What's the one that you've got?
I don't remember the name of it, but it's really not. It's more digging into drinking culture than it is mixology. I've had a hard time finding anything.
Well, have you looked at libations?
No, not a whole lot. It's been a while.
Right. One of the books that's actually it should be in our catalog on our website is called Libations of the 18th Century. That's filled with drinks, but mixology is something different. And there isn't as much of that going on. Again, I think that's kind of a 19th century flourishing of mixed drinks. There certainly are some mixed drinks that show up in the 18th century, but they're all based basically around the same thing. It's like, well, you take your rum and you add some water and some lemon juice and you call it about 17 different things. So it might be called, grog. It might be called, what was the other one? We did
start with an S.
We did a punch. There's a bunch of
the cherry.
Right. Bounce. There's a lot of different.
Sorry.
But they're all very, very similar compared to, I think, what happens when you get into the 19th century and they get a little bit fancier.
All right. So, this is a question that's really good for John. How was glass made in the time period?
Glass is just this great, rich, deep topic, and it goes way back.
You have 20 seconds. I'm joking. Go for it.
20 seconds. Let me talk really fast. If you want to look at some of the really heart of what's going on with glass, you look at Roman glass, and the Romans were doing really, really very, very interesting glass, amazingly modern looking glass at times. The next kind of step that I would super zoom into is what's happening in the 15th, 16th century German glass. So that Black Forest glass, where if you've got giant trees and you got sand and you've got clay, you can make glass. So they take the trees, they'd burn them up, they'd use the heat to burn them up, they'd make the ashes, they'd mix it with the sand, you'd have glass. If you had clay, then you could make all the different materials that the ovens and the crucibles to melt the glass in, and then you could make glass. So you've got some great German glass in the early time period, and then you've got the standard glass work that shows up all over the 18th century, French glass, English glass, and they even tried glass work in North America. Early on, they thought glass was going to work at Jamestown, but it's not the easiest thing to ship. So it didn't work out early on, but by the 18th century, certainly we've got a great glass industry happening here in North America. Did I cover it?
Yeah, that was good. It was brief and it was concise. Really wonderful.
Well, I wish I could talk for about 3 hours on glass.
So Debbie Boring is asking if we still have Nutmeg Tavern mugs, and we do. And Aaron's going to drop that into the chat so that you can see the link.
Yeah, we still have some of these white ones, the beautiful brown ones. They sold out right away. Sorry about that. We tried really hard to get enough of the brown ones, but that didn't happen the way it was supposed to. But we still have some of these really cool white ones, and we'll work on more.
All right, here's a sticky one. I don't think it's too sticky. Anyway, what are your feelings on the purists who believe you must be 100% authentic down to hand sewing on all clothing and even tents?
Well, that's really good, and everyone should shoot for that. But no one's perfect, and it's a sliding scale. Always of when people start out, you can't be perfect and you can't afford perfect, but you're working toward being better. And so that's where I stand. I would think it would be great if everyone aimed for that goal of having completely hand-sewn clothing and machine or hand-sewn tents or whatever. One of the other things, though, is when you look at some of the things that were made in the 18th century, you would swear they were done by a machine. Their stitching is so nice. And if you can't reproduce super nice hand stitching, then you're not there. You're kind of mixing and matching. Even then, you might have this wonderful cloth and it's sewn not to perfection, and you would say, well, that it might as well not be. You might as well have sewn that out of something very inexpensive, because the sewing, the tailoring wasn't done up to the level of the cloth that you've got there. We got a lot of battles to fight if we want to be perfect.
Which leads us into our next question. How do you make cloth in the 18th century? I've got a knack for asking you a question that takes hours to answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just like you make cloth today, really, you use looms. They just used hand looms instead of machine looms. Today, we've got giant looms that are all run by computers and are all fancy, and they can probably make fabric at a yard in a quarter of a second, right? But in the 18th century, not everyone, they had hand looms, and there were some factory kind of situations. A lot of cloth was woven in a cottage industry, so there were a lot of people that would have a loom and they would weave their own cloth and sell small quantities of it into the market. And there would be, jobbers that would collect up lots of different people's fabric together and sell it in large lots. So it was done sometimes in a more of an industrial setting, and a lot of times in a cottage industry sort of setting in people's homes.
Jordan Hicks comments, "My hands are a machine."
There you
Look
go.
at that. The second part of that question was, were there clothing manufacturers in the 18th century colonial America?
Yes. There were tailors and clothing manufacturers. Many times it was called like slops, where we would call it off the rack clothing that was manufactured, and you would just walk in and say, well, I need something about my size. And then there were many tailors. Much more than there would be today, and he's going to measure you. He's going to make an item specifically for you. I want my shirt made out of red fabric, and he's going to measure you and make it special. We don't nearly see that as much today, obviously, but people expected their clothing to be much more expensive compared to as a percentage of their entire income. So in the 18th century, I don't know what the average clothing percentage is for a person in North America today. It's probably 10, 15. For me, it's like nothing. I wear the same clothes over and over and over again. But in the 18th century, they would have expected to spend a lot more of their disposable income, or just their income, on clothing than we do today, because they were sewn by tailors, not in an industrial atmosphere.
So I have a technical question really quick, and this is for the chat. Rose said she just got a notification that we went live, so I'm kind of curious as to how that works for everyone else.
Yeah, we did something new today.
Yeah, we're trying to get it so people are notified ahead of time via YouTube, and then notified again when we go live. And I just want to see if people got the notification right away, or how it usually happens.
Yeah, maybe we needed to schedule it earlier so that people got an earlier notification. I don't know.
Yeah, this person said it was like half hour after we started.
That's annoying. But
and then someone said they got it 30 minutes beforehand. So that was probably yeah.
See, I don't know that we can play with it a whole lot on our end and fix that.
Yeah, I think that's a. So yeah, people are saying they got it twice. That was because we did a schedule,
right,
which let you know
ahead of time, which is fine. But then it seems like there are some people who didn't get one, not even the scheduled one. Yeah. So yeah, just. Yeah, we're continuing to see how this notification system works, and obviously, YouTube kind of messes with the notification system. Some people find out, some people don't, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah, and it seems like it's every other comment is like, got one 15 minutes before, didn't get one, got one 30 minutes in.
3:58.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's really good in the chat for the folks who got it late to check what their notification settings are like on the channel, because maybe it needs to be up the notch if they want to get kind of notification faster.
And
Go hit
Don
that
Johnson
bell.
says none at all.
Don Johnson didn't get any.
Man.
Sorry, Don.
Come on, YouTube.
So, somebody's asking, does John still employ a potter at his store?
We have a local potter that makes things for us, and sometimes I'll go down in the basement and potter around. But there's nobody on premises to any great extent. We do have and actually we're working on a couple more local potters that we're experimenting with now.
I'm sorry, somebody wrote all in caps screaming at me. Talk about shipbuilding, and I don't know what they want to know.
Well, shipbuilding is
It just like totally caught my eye, and I was
sorry.
how rude! Why are you screaming at me?
shipbuilding was, if you read different folks in the 18th century from their point of view and what they're thinking about shipbuilding. Peter Kalm talks about it. In 1749, he talks about the fact that there is a great quantity of shipbuilding going on in North America, but that we don't have as good of timbers and as strong oak as they do over in Europe. So their ships are shoddier and not made as well. But there's a lot of shipbuilding going on. And ships they were the tractor trailer trucks of the 18th century. They're moving tons, right? A lot of the commerce that is happening is happening by ships. Anything obviously going overseas, that is so important. Both the maritime, just the number of people that are employed doing all that shipping, the number of people that are employed building the ships, bringing that lumber. Lumber was a big business. Whether it's for building ships or for other things. So those are tremendously important industries. They turn out to be even more important industries when we move into the 19th century and we really start to take the fore in some of those things. But it's one of those really important things. And like, I mentioned the sailors, and last week we were looking at different things and the riots and how those sailors they're troublemakers. Boy, they're troublemakers.
It's the second week in a row we've talked about the sailors.
Yeah, it's a bad thing.
Rowdy boys.
Yes, super rowdy.
So
Yeah. No. Let's not go there.
Oh man, John, did almond brandy make it across the ocean?
I don't know. Almonds show up just so much in English cookery. In fact, I have to work hard finding recipes that don't have almonds in it. I'm not sure why they're so really, really prolific in the English cookery in the 18th century. Almost as bad as nutmeg, but not quite. But especially in anything that has to do with sort of confection or pastry and cookies, and almonds are just there all the time. But I can't tell you about almond brandy and its popularity in North America.
All right, here's a question that, what about tobacco smoking? I figure it's probably a question for me. What about tobacco smoking? Was it mainly pipe, or did cigarettes or cigars exist?
Right, take it away, Ryan.
There was lots of pipe smoking. Cigars did exist. I'm finding more and more references to cigar smoking in the time period. And nobody. I've never seen reference to anybody wrapping it in paper and smoking it. But you have to remember, if there's a leaf and people are in a field, they're going to put it in their lips. So people were chewing tobacco as well.
And
pretty sure that was for John, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Snuff was huge.
And snuff was huge.
And I think that was the go-to way for women to use tobacco.
Martha was a snuff taker.
Martha was?
Oh, yeah. She has this whole big collection of snuff boxes. This
changed my life.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
First lady Man,
Snuff?
what would? Never mind. I'm not going to say what I was.
Yeah,
gonna say.
and cigars are interesting and one that needs more research on. They generally were referred to as Spanish cigars, but they show up in a lot of different newspaper advertisements. So that's one to track down and see, just how popular they were.
There was
and
a
what they meant.
reference to a person that was rolling his own in New York. I don't know what cigars looked like then.
Yeah. Were they more like little or
Right.
yeah.
There's really nothing. I've never seen a photo of a cigar. I mean, a photo
Illustration,
painting,
yeah.
an illustration. Nobody ever took a picture of someone smoking
we
this
know?
cigar.
So
And then this question is, how big was concealed carry of weapons for self-defense back then?
I think they were open carry kind of folk in the time period, and I was referencing Dr. Alexander Hamilton, 1744, and here he is traveling up out of Maryland, and he's got a pair of pistols on his person as he's traveling. He's ready for anybody on the highway that wants to mess with him. And
He's
there
a
is-
regular Rooster Cogburn.
yeah, and there was some of that sort of highwayman kind of thing going on in North America, and he was concerned about. Although I think some people were making fun of him even in the 18th century for being loaded, as he traveled in the 18th century. That certainly drew attention to him as he was traveling.
All right. I have to answer this one more question because it makes me so happy to talk about it.
You guys are making it too easy for him.
What is snuff? Well, snuff is finely pulverized tobacco that you sniff, and it is wonderful.
On to our next question. Let me do some donations real quick.
Please, Aaron.
These guys don't appreciate my love for tobacco.
No, I do. I really do. So where were we? Oh, here we go. €5, I believe, from Timothy Keys.
Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you.
It saw a hurricane in Chicago twice, but your catalog finally made it to Slovakia.
Whoa. Okay.
That catalog went through a lot.
Yeah.
That's excellent. $5 from Daniel Johnson. Love you guys.
Thank you, Daniel.
you.
Thank you.
Christian Ford, $20. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Christian.
lot.
Thanks for being the sexiest Nutmeg channel ever. It's not a problem.
That's probably not very difficult.
I take full credit. All right. We have an Instagram contest.
Yeah, so every week we go through the Instagram feed. We're looking for interesting pictures on Instagram that have the Townsends hashtag. Maybe you can reference the Townsends _official. And we're looking for things that have to do with history or nutmeg or recipes that we do. It doesn't actually have to connect with Townsend specifically if it's historical, whatever, merch things. We look for anything that sort of connects up with history and the Townsend's hashtag. And this week's winner is
It is etched in time.
Etched in Time. And check out that picture.
It
It's
is
got,
really cool.
Yeah,
got the new nutmeg mug. Yeah. And the cool Nutmeg Tavern thing with the pumpkin.
Yeah.
So
And they must have been quick on the draw because they've got one of the brown colored mugs.
the new, he got it.
Those
there
were
right
gone by the time the stream was done,
Yeah, it
basically.
didn't take
Yeah.
long to
That
get
was
rid of those.
awesome.
I tried to get.
It's
Anyway,
okay. It's okay. We got more merch coming. More merch is coming.
Yeah, we got plans for that stuff.
so thank you so much. What was his name again?
That is
the
etched in time.
Etched in Time. Thank you so much, Etched in Time, for the image. Thank you. And Ryan will DM you, or already has.
Already has.
Already has. And you'll get a gift certificate or whatever weirdness that we decide to send your way. So I'll
John's
pick,
left.
a random
pick a
thing we got
random
lying
thing
around.
off the shelf and boom.
Send him that pout fish book.
Yes.
Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion in here about condiments, what was popular, and specifically mustard. But we need to answer it as two different questions. So let's talk about condiments, and then let's see about how much mustard is used.
Condiments and mustard. Well, I'm going to say check out mushroom ketchup. Everyone who has not everyone. 99.9% of people who've tried the mushroom ketchup have loved it because it's really, really good and it's a wonderful condiment. And it's a lot like Worcestershire sauce, but it's better. And it is very, very popular in the 18th century. They had different kinds of sauces, and sometimes they would show up in a recipe. In fact, not this Monday's episode, but next Monday's episode will have a particular sauce that's made along with it. And they made different sorts of sauces, gravies that I think they considered as a condiment in the 18th century. Obviously, we don't have anything. They don't have anything like tomato ketchup that we have. Blech, that's bad. But they certainly had different kinds of mustards. Those are generally kind of done on the spot, and you know mix up your mustard seed with your vinegar and your oil, and you would make mustards. They kind of fit with particular kinds of dishes, and they would have like fish sauces too. So yeah, they had those kinds of things. I don't know how else to answer it. Those guys are talking to themselves behind the scenes.
Well, Aaron about fell out of his chair when you said tomato ketchup is yucky. He and I go to lunch sometimes together, and he'll get a cheeseburger and put ketchup on it, and then dip his potato chips in ketchup as well, which is just crazy.
Well, I guess we're gonna have to look for a new editor.
Speaking of ketchup, how did frontiersmen carry their equipment? If they didn't have a horse, would they use a pack frame?
Let me defend myself real quick with this.
No.
There's no need
There
for
is
that.
no defense. Pack frames, pack baskets, yeah. Knapsacks, bags that they would carry items in, yes. Frames, I haven't seen anything that sort of pops up into my mind for anything that's quite like that, but they had a lot of similar kinds of items for carrying things if they weren't using a pack horse.
Okay. How about a video on tanning hides?
There's a possibility that we'll be touching on some of that in a shoot that we're doing late in October. We'll see what we can do. And it can be, depending on the kind of tanning you're doing, can be a very complex process.
So what was the pumpkin spice equivalent in the 18th century?
Pumpkin.
I'm assuming what they mean is what was the hip
Spice.
thing to drink or to flavor absolutely everything with?
I don't know how to answer that. Nutmeg.
Nutmeg. Yes. Somebody would like to see a video on us making hats, blocking them, steaming them.
Oh,
doing that
you
a little
want
bit.
the secrets, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all secret
I'll
stuff.
tell you, the guy that makes the hats is a grumpy guy,
Yeah.
and he doesn't like
He's
to be
in
in
trouble.
I
front.
hate that guy.
And it's like a guild. I mean, those are like industrial secrets that are guarded.
For someone that wishes to learn old trades, can you recommend schools that teach this?
It depends on the trade. There are certainly some folks in different parts of the country that tackle old trades. There's a lot of activity in the blacksmithing realm in different parts of the country, so you can certainly look at that. I know there's a good blacksmithing community right around here. A lot of people teaching that, learning about that, and that one's really hot and active right now. There are some other folks that sort of teach some of these other trades. Tillers International up in just south of
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo. What town is it though that their actual address is?
Jeez, I don't know.
Okay,
I just know
there's a
it's
little
really
town
close to
south of Kalamazoo that I think their actual address was. But Tillers has classes on some of those old kinds of trades: woodworking, blacksmithing, coopering, horse-drawn vehicles. Lots of great classes they do there. Hopefully, we'll be actually working with them in the near future on some video work. So hopefully, you'll be able to see some of that in the near future. And there's undoubtedly some other operations that are very similar to that all around the country.
All right, I got 4 blast through them questions, then I think Aaron's got some donations. Any recommendations for a newbie reading on 18th century lifestyle and cooking? And that's probably really easy. A link, I don't know.
Lifestyle and cooking.
Yeah. So if you had to pick one cookbook and one lifestyle book, what would you go with?
I don't know whether to point to a book that's actually done in a modern sense, pointing to the old things for newbies rather than pointing directly to primary source material. You know, it's been a long time since I've been in that kind of setting. And I'm sure, you know, my first blush would be to send you right to primary sources and say, you know, dig right in. But that is really tossing you in, not the deep end of the pool, but into the deepest part of the ocean. Boo! So maybe that's not the best place to point people. And I'm not sure what there is out there really, really fresh. If I was going to point somebody to a book that's been out there for a while that points to both of those topics, I would probably say Tidings of the 18th Century. That's probably a 25-year-old book by now, or 30 years old. I'm older than I used to be. It's weird. But Tidings from the 18th Century, probably the first book that that's a tough question to just answer right this minute.
All right. Somebody said that they want a Nutmeg Tavern tee with the logo on the back and the clip art picture of nutmeg seed on the front.
Nutmeg,
hint.
what? A nutmeg seed on the front?
That's what they want.
A nutmeg on the front. Nutmegs are weird looking. I don't know
Yeah,
how to
they're
graphically represent them. They look like a brain or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nutmeg on the brain, though. Then maybe there's
Well, then you
something
could have
on
a brain and a... Anyway.
there. How was land acquired, and what type of currency was used during this time period?
Land acquirement, besides the state... Boy, I would really have to do some... it is
looking for
not
the
like it
short
is
answer.
today. Huh?
We're looking for the short answer.
Yeah, it is not like it. It's not necessarily like it is today, and it depends on where you're at in the time period. But sometimes it was like, oh, you go out and survey that and give them a little bit of money, and boom, you've got this. I don't have a quick answer for that one. What was the second part of it, though?
Currency.
Currency. So there's a lot of paper currency going on. And the abuse of paper currency and its lack of being able to hold a value is one of the reasons why Congress, when they were doing the Constitution, said, you know, paper currency is a bad thing. Money should be gold and silver. And they never got rid of that in the Constitution, but we managed to get rid of it today. I'm not sure how that happens, how they get away with that, but anyway, paper currency was big because we didn't have enough hard currency here in the colonies. Ryan looks like he wants me to stop talking.
Yeah, I do. We got more. We got to cover some ground here.
Okay, we got to get. So shut up, John. Next question.
Sorry, that was a great question, but we gotta go. Sorry if this was already asked, but when are we getting the rest of the barn raising footage?
Next Wednesday?
Yeah, soon. Sometime soon.
Aaron thinks it's really close and it's looking really good and even better than the first episode, right?
Yes.
Yes, even better than the first episode.
He sounds really confident over there, doesn't he?
No, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday, I believe. Hopefully.
We're shooting for that. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
That's what we're hoping for. Next Wednesday.
Man, I am not usually in the question seat, but there are some killer questions, and I wish we could get to them all, but we can't. We got to go to donations, and we got to say goodbye.
Go, donations.
Donations. So 2 donations from Keltoid 5.
Ooh, thanks,
Keltoid 5.
Each for $10.
Thank you, Keltoid 5.
Looking at the amounts in some of these recipes, how big was an average serving? How big were the pans? And then maybe a video about kitchen disasters, what not to do. I like that. I like that a lot.
What not to do is
Yeah.
everything that John does when the camera's not turned on.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I am a disaster.
Oh, today went so smooth. I mean,
Did it? I had a
Yeah, it
disaster.
went-
Remember, I hit that thing and then the ashes went everywhere and I had to redo something.
I was being
There was a
sarcastic.
disaster. Anyway.
Sarcastic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it turned out great though.
Darn, I thought he was being serious.
Beer soup is good.
The soup turned out excellent. Monday.
Monday, yeah.
What was the first? Oh, I think their portions were actually similar to our portions. Well, not if you go to a restaurant. I mean, you could feed an army with what they generally try to feed you at a restaurant. But
What restaurants are you going to?
maybe you just got a bigger stomach than I do. And their cooking vessels are going to be pretty typical in size, although sometimes they have some rather small ones. So there's the answer. What was
Is that
there?
it?
Was there anything else? Aaron?
No.
What
I-
just
Okay,
happened?
he's done. He's done with that. Okay, great.
Oh, Rose is asking for a blooper reel, and sorry, we can't really do that because
We're so
they are
good.
too good.
Yeah, we don't
Yep,
do any. We don't have
that's it.
bloopers anymore.
1-to-1.
Yeah,
I think we did one a long time ago, though, didn't we?
yeah.
And
yeah,
it was
they're-
tough to find footage.
Yeah, I'm just too good at this. No, that's totally a joke. We just, yeah, it's difficult to put together a blooper roll, and it actually tends to take a lot more time than
Oh,
you
yeah.
would expect. More time, at least in the editing bay, than 2 or 3 videos put together, and so that's why you don't see that. Even though sometimes it's like, boy, that would have made a great blooper reel. It's hard to find that stuff. It's not an easy job.
Most of the bloopers are just you like resetting
Yeah.
what you're gonna
Right.
say. It's not like something crazy.
It's like, oh, John got tongue tied. Look at that.
yeah.
Yeah,
which is-
so
after a while, it's
I'm
like,
sorry.
whatever.
This, Nutmeg Tavern, this is like one blooper reel the whole time.
Somebody asked if this is a green screen behind you.
No. Oh, that's there. That stuff is all
I'm sorry,
there.
but that came from my magnificent hands.
Well, he painted it.
Oh, hang on. $50.
I made the
Hey,
tiles.
hold on.
What?
$50 from Julie Stevens.
Thank you, Julie Stevens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
If you can explore Scandinavian cooking, I would love to find out when Lefse showed up. Lefse. Unleavened flatbread made with potatoes and dry fried, kind of like a tortilla, but with potatoes and flour.
Sounds
That's
very
interesting.
interesting. We'll
Yeah.
do some digging on that
Yes,
one.
thank
We'll
you
see
so
what we can
much.
find out. Sounds like fun. And, all that sort of Scandinavian, Northern European influence is actually is very, very influential to what's happening to North America. So great topic. You guys do such a tremendous job in the live streams here with the comments, with the questions, and in the channel at large. It is a community that everyone would love to have. All those people out on YouTube, you guys do that. So thank you so much for your incredible work in making the community of this channel what it is. You make this happen, and because I can't work against nothing. I really need your wonderful feedback. So thank you for what you do for us when you share our videos, when you comment, when you give us, super chats or whatever. I mean, there's so many different ways that people show us their support. So you guys are doing that. Thank you so much for that. And thanks for watching today.